અમીન સાહેબ વિડિયો ઓન નથી કર્યો. ઓકે. ગુડ મોર્નિંગ અમીન સાહેબ.
Good morning, કેમ છો?
Good morning.
Good morning, Crocodile.
કેમ છો?
Nice to see you.
We wait for a
Morning,
few more
Sachin.
minutes for people to join. We'll wait for a few more minutes. Morning, Dr. Jagdish.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Eager to see Chitra.
Yeah, she's there.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Kem cho?
All good. Maja
All
my
good.
exam.
Ekdam good. Very good. Nice to see you. After a
Yes,
long
sir.
time.
Same here. Yes, sir. After very long.
So when Satish sent me the invitation, I was excited. I said, Abhi, Chitra, I haven't seen for a long time. Good to see her now.
Thank you so much, sir. It's an honor for having all of you join this.
We start the meeting. Good morning to all of you. Welcome back to the Saturday Club morning meeting. And today we have with us Dr. Chitra Pandya. She has done her MD in community medicine and diploma in community mental health from NIMHANS. She is founder of the Medicine Beyond Classroom, a community outreach program of Varun Complete Healthcare. Her area of interest are community-based promotive and preventive mental health for adolescents and young adults. And she has conceptualized, designed, implemented multiple interventions integrating community-based life skills education with community-based medical education. So over to Chitra. Chitra, you have about 45 minutes to talk on the subject of gifting our children the superpower of psychosocial resilience. And then we'll have 10-15 minutes of interaction. So over to you, Dr. Chitra.
Thank you so much. And I'm just, as I already mentioned, I'm very honored to get an opportunity to present at the Saturday Club. I've seen my father associated with this organization ever since I was a baby. And this definitely is a privilege I'm very honored to get. And with that, I would like to share my screen and we can begin the topic. Please let me know if I'm audible okay.
You are well audible.
So good morning, everyone. Our topic for today is gifting our children the superpower of psychosocial resilience. The structure for today's session would be understanding the adolescent mind. With all of us doctors, we already understand the adolescent mind a lot, but the topic for today is to understand the adolescent or the developing mind better, just so that we can explain it better to parents of adolescents and young adults who come to us. The second part will be the superpower that we all deserve, not just our kids, not just our children, but all of us. That is psychosocial resilience. And the third part will be life skills education, which is a path to building this psychosocial resilience. So just a little background about myself. Ever since I was in my residency, pursuing my residency in community medicine, I was closely engaged with adolescents. And I also wrote my thesis on developing digital storytelling as a tool to impart life skills education to rural adolescents. And it was since 2018 that I have been very interested in the field of preventive mental health, and I have professionally developed it as my niche area, which I hope to pursue for my professional career in the years and decades to come. And so since then, I've been closely engaged with the adolescents and young adults. And so with that, I would like to begin by saying that what do we actually see when we peek inside the adolescent brain? And as you can see, I've scratched out the adolescent brain and I've actually written the developing mind. And both these terms, adolescence, I've replaced it with developmental age group, and brain, I've replaced it with mind, for the simple reason that we define adolescence as, say, 10 to 19 years. WHO defines it as that. But the fact is that adolescence, or the developing age, age is actually a very dynamic phenomenon, which is affected not only by the set definitions that we give, but they're actually defined by a lot of social, cultural, emotional, a lot of intersections of a lot of things that happen around our children as they grow up. So the age group of adolescence is actually, it's not something that you can define by just saying that it's the 10 to 19 years age group, but it's actually very dynamic. It changes even from generation to generation. Like if we look at today's generation, the age wherein they transition from children to adolescence or the developing brain is reducing because of exposure to so much media, and the time when they have to take up complete adult responsibilities is actually, that age is increasing. The age of them getting married, the age when they start earning, the age when they start supporting their own family, having kids. So that age is increasing, and hence this age or this phase of life, which is a transition from childhood to adulthood, is actually way longer than it used to be. And so I'll keep emphasizing that it's not just the age groups of 10 to 19 years, but it could be less than 10 and it could be more than 19, maybe even up to 30, that the human brain actually keeps developing as it has always. But in today's times, it's important to address that it is a developing mind way more than just 19 years of age. So with that, I'd also like to give a disclaimer. I didn't know how to really title this slide, but these are just miscellaneous points. That first, as doctors, we need to understand that the process of empowering others actually begins with empowering ourselves. And before we directly interact with the adolescents or the young adults, it's important for us to convey to their parents that they also need to empower themselves first before they try to empower their own children. So it's a process, and all of us, while empowering our children, actually empower our own selves. And secondly, since we are talking a lot about mental health and mental well-being, I would just like to give a very simple definition of what actually mental health is. So it's basically just the emotions that we feel, the thoughts that we think, and the behaviors that we present. And so there are a lot of academic definitions out there, but this is the definition I love the most, and it's actually one definition that the mental health NGO in our country located in Goa, that is Sangat, often refers to. So probably this is one of the definitions that they use very often when they work in the field, and I completely resonate with this. So without mental health, there's no health, because we are, every second that we live, we feel emotions. There are thoughts that we think, and there's something or the other that we are actually doing. There's always some behaviors that we are presenting. So all of that is mental health. I seem to have skipped a slide, but so coming back to the slide, so I just had the slides in the wrong order. So after that disclaimer, actually we talk about what do we see when we peek inside our developing mind. And what we see is a lot of stress. So that's the first thing that we are seeing. When we look at our adolescents and young adults, we see them under a lot of stress, facing a lot of life challenges. And the source of this stress could be multifactorial. It could be dramatic, physical, sexual, psychosocial, developmental changes. It could be academic pressure, the peer pressure, the desire to fit in, relationship difficulties, troubles with adults at home and in school and all around them, bullying, low self-esteem, great exposure to social media, seeing a very idealistic life on social media, not being able to relate their own lives with that. So there's, as we all know, there's a plethora of sources of stress for our kids, adolescents, young adults, even all of us. So they are under a lot of constant stress. So the problem with that is that stress during adolescence is actually not something unusual. We don't need to pathologize something which is a part of human development, which is stress during adolescence. So stress itself is not unusual. It is not pathological. But what is problematic is chronic stress, because it leads to a release of, as we all know, glucocorticoids, which are the stress hormones. And to put it simply, the adolescent brain or the developing brain is especially sensitive to these stress hormones, which leads to damaging effects on mental health. More specifically, it adversely influences learning, memory, and most importantly, emotional processing. And so in the long run, it increases incidence of psychiatric and psychological disorders. So our aim is not to reduce stress or not to pathologize stress, but to actually ensure that this stress does not become chronic, is not persistent. So persistent stress needs to be addressed, needs to be prevented. But we don't need to freak out simply because our adolescents and young adults are experiencing stress. Experiencing stress is a part of life. So moving on, what do you think is the solution for this? Does it mean that we need to protect them from all stresses and challenges in life? Like we stand in front of them like a shield and say that, no, we are not going to allow our kid to face any challenges in life. Do you think that is the solution? Or is the solution imposing very strict rules with the same idea of protecting them from vices such as drug abuse, unsafe sex, inappropriate media content, blah, blah, and blah? So what are the rules that our parents often impose when they come to us? When of me being a community medicine practitioner, I am usually the one who goes to them, visits them in their homes, meets them in the community. So what do I see the parents doing? No mobile. Mobile na જોઈએ, mobile nahi chalega. No relationships. Arey, boyfriend hai, girlfriend hai? How dare you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner or a relationship while you're still in school? No parties. You're not going anywhere. वहां पे शराब पियोगे, वहां पे drugs करोगे. No going out with friends, no sleepovers. So imposing very strict rules. Do you think that is the solution to protecting our child from facing stress in their life? Actually not. Because where does all of this bring us? If we do all of this, it actually brings us to the second thing that we see when we peek inside the adolescent mind. When we peek inside the adolescent or the developing mind, we see that experience gathering is actually a very crucial part of their journey from childhood to adulthood. The adolescent brain is hardwired to be reward seeking, sensation seeking. I'm not going into the physiology and the anatomy of that because that probably is beyond the scope of our presentation today with given our time constraints. But basically the developing mind is hardwired to be reward seeking, and hence it is prone to taking risks. So risk taking behaviors which actually might even undermine their own survival. But these behaviors serve a very important adaptive role in development, meaning that this reward seeking or sensation seeking tendency makes them gather experience in an independent fashion, which is actually necessary for them to reach an adult level of independence. So that is the goal that we should have as parents or physicians, that our children should grow up to be independent individuals who are able to support themselves even when we'll not be around to protect them. And so if we impose such strict rules on them, if we don't allow them to gather experiences, how are they going to process the world around them? How are they going to develop skills which they'll need to become independent adults? So putting strict rules on them, preventing them from gaining experience is not the solution to protecting them from chronic stress. So if that's the case, so the question still remains, what is the solution to preventing chronic stress in developing minds? So the answer to that is very simple. You don't prevent them from experiencing stress in life. What we actually want to do is to equip them to cope healthily with the inevitable stresses of everyday life in a fast evolving world. And this is no definition. This is a phrase that I often use because this is a phrase that I've just come up with experience. What we want them to do is to cope healthily with life. In today's fast evolving world, stresses are inevitable. Everyday stresses in life are inevitable, and you don't want to prevent them from facing challenges. You want to equip them with skills through which they'll be able to overcome these stresses. What we want to do is to give them the superpower of resilience. We want to make them resilient. We want to protect, we want to help them build a shield around themselves. We don't want to be their shield. We want them to be the shield for their own selves. We want them to suit up like a superhero so that they have the superpower of resilience, with resilience being simply the ability to cope with everyday stresses of life, the ability to bounce back. There is also this concept of anti-fragility, which says that when somebody experiences hardship, they bounce back not just to the level that they were before they faced the challenges, but they actually bounce up higher. So we want our children to be anti-fragile, to grow through challenges, and we want them to be resilient, to at least gain back the level of mental health that they had before they faced the challenges. So that is the psychosocial superpower that I'm referring to, which is psychosocial resilience. To give a very academic definition, I've also mentioned this on my screen, but I'm not going to read it out loud. I don't think that's required. But so psychosocial resilience is a proven concept, and that is the superpower that we want to give to our kids. And so all of you might say that, well, this is a girl who does have no child of her own, and she's going on and on and on about teaching us how to teach parents to be parents. And so I am very humbly saying that I agree that this must be easier said than done. And hopefully one day when I'm a parent, I'll know how to actually implement this. But being a community medicine practitioner, I have dealt with adolescents a lot in the community, not in the health setup or the hospital setup. And so I've seen that at least we are able to initiate conversations which can help these adolescents become resilient in the years to come. And so that brings me to the third thing that we see when we peek inside the developing mind. And that is a good news. It's not a scary news like maybe the first one that we spoke about. And this third lesson, when we peek into a developing mind, is that actually the period of adolescence and young adulthood is a second window of opportunity. And this is a concept that was provided by a UNICEF document which speaks about how the adolescent brain is a second window of opportunity. And this is a wonderful document which I recommend to all physicians who are working in the field of adolescent mental health. And so the concept is that brain growth and building is what happens in early childhood. They are like the brick and mortar, that the brain is actually expanding in size, as we all know. Gray matter and white matter are actually being formed. So that is our first window of opportunity when we talk about the golden 1000 days early childhood development. That is the first window of opportunity that we are talking about. So what is the second window of opportunity? So this is when the brain, the human brain, is actually getting molded. It is getting sculpted. There are neuronal connections that are being formed. It's not necessarily increasing in size as much as it increased in early childhood, but it's now being literally sculpted. And the scientific term for this process is actually brain sculpting. So what better term than to understand that this is the time when we can actually shape a human brain. And so here it is where the neuronal connections are actually maturing. And these neuronal connections are the ones which actually support reasoning, decision making, emotional and social processing. And so I think these are the terms which you might have understood encompass the entire mental well-being concept. If we are able to reason well, if we are able to make decisions, think critically, if we are able to process our emotional experiences, our social experiences, we are going to be mentally well, mentally healthy. And so this is the time when we can actually help our young generation by helping them mold their brains and minds in a healthy way. And so we need to step into the role of an artist, not people who are very strict, not people who hammer their child's brain, but instead we need to step into the shoes of being an artist, a sculptor. So our kids could be our work of art, right? So we don't have to force them into anything, but what we can actually do is provide them the opportunities to establish behavior patterns which are positive, because this is the time when behavior patterns that are established are likely to last for a lifetime well into adulthood. And so as their sculptors, it's up to us to provide them with avenues and opportunities wherein they can, in their experience gathering process, they can gather more healthy experiences and develop positive spirals as compared to gaining negative experiences which push them into establishing negative or bad behavioral patterns such as, say, drug abuse or substance abuse. So this is the time when we can actually just redirect them onto a positive path rather than onto a negative spiral. And so how do we actually do that? Like, we need something tangible, right? To be able to understand how to be this artist, how to sculpt an adolescent or a developing brain. And so life skills are our saviors. They are the tools which help our adolescents and young adults to actually build resilience. So life skills come to our rescue. And as you can see, probably you can use this slide when you talk to the adolescents. And I'm not sure if the people in this audience are actually aware of the superheroes that the young generation talks about, because even I am not as aware as people younger than me. But so these are superheroes, a group of superheroes called the Avengers, and they are just out there to save the world. Each one of them has their own different super skill, and together they work together to actually just defeat the villains of this world. And so I think of life skills as these superheroes which are at our beck and call, and we have 10 life skills as defined by WHO. And so these are nothing but psychosocial competencies that empower us to cope healthily with, as I said, challenges of everyday life. So these are not to overcome any big hurdle that you are going to face just once or twice in your life. This is about living your life in your daily routine in an empowered way. So these are just psychosocial competencies which we can put to use in our everyday life. And WHO defines them as abilities for adaptive and positive behavior that enable individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. And so without delving onto the definition more, I would just like to come to our 10 superpowers, because, well, they are superpowers, so we have to be excited about them, right? And so these 10 superpowers can be clustered into can be divided into three clusters. The first is the scoping and self-management skills. The second are the thinking skills. And the third are the social skills. So how I look at them is that the first cluster is all about your own self. You don't need anybody around you to actually learn these three things, which is self-awareness, coping within yourself with your stress and emotions. The second cluster is thinking skills. So you need to have certain life circumstances to actually develop these skills. And so these are related to problem solving. And how we go about them is the first step would be creative thinking. We are going to discuss each one of these in a little more detail. So the steps would be to think creatively, have out of the box options, and then think critically, analyze which are the options which are actually feasible given our circumstances. Then we make a decision to actually implement the choice that we made through critical thinking. And when we put all these together, we can actually solve our problem. And so these are thinking skills, and we need actual life circumstances to learn these skills, because you only learn by practicing these in real world. And then the social skills. So social skills are skills which you cannot just sit in a room and think and develop. These are skills wherein you need to be social, you need to have social interactions. So first is empathy, wherein we all know what empathy is. We often say just putting ourselves in shoes of the other person, but it's easier said than done. It's not something that you just tell your child ki think of yourself as like, being in XYZ shoes. It doesn't work that way. There has to be more conversation around that. After that, there's effective communication. So how you express yourselves, how you understand others when they are trying to express themselves. So it's effective communication. And when you empathize with others, and if you're able to communicate yourself well as understand what they are saying, you are bound to have rich interpersonal relationships. So that brings us to the end of a summary of the 10 life skills. And with that, I move to discussing the life skills individually. And so our first life skills is the Bhuvan of Lagan, basically the team captain. Where Bhuvan goes, the others follow, right? So self-awareness is our captain, is our mother life skill. And so our next slide is actually showing just that. Where the mother duck goes, the baby ducks just follow, the ducklings just follow, and well in line. They don't go here and there. If we are aware of our own self, the other skills fall in place, and there's a reason, and that's the very reason why it's called the mother skill. So self-awareness is all about being aware of one's own strengths, with an emphasis on one's own strengths, and then also being aware of one's own weaknesses and trying to utilize or leverage our strengths to actually overcome those weaknesses or even compensate for them. Because you aren't human if you don't have weaknesses, right? So weaknesses are not bad. Weaknesses are what make you human. So we embrace our weaknesses, but it's important to be aware that all of us have our weaknesses. And so the first thing is to emphasize how each one of us has our own strength, and then how all of us also have weaknesses, right? Then it also includes understanding what we value in life and how much, and do we value it too much or too less. So these are things that you might be wondering how to talk about them. And so I actually use modules which are published by the WHO as well as the government of India. And so these have activities which actually act as conversation initiators. And I'll just give one very simple example in this life skill. It's called the river of life, wherein when we are in the community, we encourage our adolescents to depict their life in form of a river, and we encourage them to use whatever materials are available around them. It could be sand, dust, pebbles, stones, leaves, dried leaves, anything and everything is on the table. Nothing is, there are no restrictions. It's their life. So they are free to depict it in the way they want to depict it. And so we encourage them to mention important events in their life, be they good or bad. And we also encourage them to think about how they want their river to be, say, 5 years in the future. And so, and then every adolescent gets a chance to narrate their river of life. And when this activity is going on, what we always do is we point out how every river is unique. So if there are 100 unique things, how can you compare any of them with each other? You can't compare things that are unique or things that are special. So one, in adolescence, when there's this intense desire to just fit in, we can point out that everybody is unique, and it's okay if you are a little different, because that's just what makes you human. The second would be we talk about how nobody's river is just full of flowers and roses, and nobody's river is just going up and up and up. Every river has its ebbs and flows. Every river has its ups and downs. We also point out that everybody's river had some ups and downs, and they're still here, meaning that all of them, regardless of what age they are, even if they are just 10 years of age, they'll have some or the other trouble that they've faced in their life, and they're still here, right? So we point that out and we say that each one of us has it in us to overcome the challenges in life. And so we just need to recognize the strengths and skills that we already have to overcome the challenges in life. And we just use them, leverage them more and more to overcome our weaknesses. And so basically the discussion revolves around how our life experiences actually shape us and how we can utilize our life experiences, be they positive or negative, to actually have a positive outcome and to actually build a life that we'd be proud of. And so we just, so this self-awareness is a lot about self-reflection and just discovering your own self as you live your life. And of course, it's a process that ends only with our death. And but it's important that we teach them, or just not teach them, teach is the wrong word. It's important that we share with them that that all of us need to introspect and reflect regarding our own lives routinely. It should not be a one-off thing that we do just when we attend some yoga session or when we attend some Swamiji ka pravachan. It's something that we should routinely do. Just think about our own selves, our own strengths and weaknesses. So with the mother skill done, we are just going to go through quickly with the other skills. The other two skills in the self-management cluster are coping with emotions and coping with stress. And so here we discuss what it means to actually experience emotions. So what are the physical things that they actually experience? Is it butterflies in their stomach when they see their crush just walk around in the school corridors? Or is it the palpitations that they feel when they don't know the answers to the exams, board exams, right? Or is it the sweaty palms? So what are the physical symptoms? What are the thoughts that they are thinking when they don't know the answers in 12th boards? What are they thinking? So what are their thoughts? Are they thinking about life not being worth living anymore, right? What are the feelings that they are feeling? So so thoughts are different and feelings are different. Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling scared? So we just talk about what it means to simply experience emotions. We then move on to understanding situations that actually cause unhealthy emotions. And so just situations which cause a lot of stress or which cause a lot of fear and this plethora of negative emotions. We then learn to identify, we also, I try to introduce this, though I'm no expert in this, but there's this concept in psychology called the rational emotive behavior therapy, which simply talks about how when you change your cognition, which is when you change your thoughts, it actually changes how you feel, and that actually helps you change how you actually act. And so we help our adolescents and young adults to think about all the rigid beliefs that they have. Like, I have to make my father happy. I have to score 95%. So we just ask them, what happens if we don't do that? Does the world end? Does it actually literally end? So what actually happens? We don't just use these terms ki aap toot padega ya the world will end. No, we ask them actual consequences. So what will happen if you don't score 95%? What happens if you actually fail? Well, you just study for 6 more months and appear in exams again, right? Your life does not end. It's just 6 months. Yes, you would like to pass in your first attempt. All of us would like to. But life's not always the way we exactly want it to be, but we can still cope with it healthily. So we also discuss suicide and the suicidal thoughts that they might be having. And so we just try to provide a very safe environment wherein no topic is off discussion. It's a safe place wherein they are free to discuss anything. I'm sorry, but I'm having some, can we have the participants please mute themselves? Okay. Papa, can you help me out with that? Mute. Karu person. There's some discussion, disturbance, sorry. Yeah. So sorry for the interruption. Yeah, so moving on, we discuss about how it's important to actually question our own rigid beliefs, just so that we can feel a little better, and that will actually influence the way we actually act and behave and lead our life. So with that, we deal with coping with emotions and coping with stress. There are a lot of activities which act as conversation initiation. So for all life skills, we have a lot of activities that are listed in the modules, and we try to use as many as possible so that these discussions don't become something which are very non-tangible, but they become things which they can actually, so they have something that they can take home, like this river of life. Basically, we also use something like the stress balloon. We talk about how balloon is like your brain or your mind, and you don't want it to burst with stress. What you want is that the air is stress, and so you want to think of things that you can do to actually deflate the balloon or let the air out of the stress balloon. So that's just another activity. Coming to the next cluster, which is the thinking skills. So I already mentioned the 4 thinking skills. So creative thinking is to encourage them to think out of the box, to help them think of all possible options, and to also help and to also add in your own options if they are not covered by the solutions that the adolescents have provided. So we basically encourage them to go out, think about their own options, and then seek options or opinions of other people as well. So that's the process of creative thinking. We then encourage them to again discuss, think within themselves, and then discuss with people around them, not just adults, even their own peers, their siblings, their teachers, anybody, just to basically brainstorm and think about which of the options are actually feasible in the real world, right? So that would be critical thinking. Critical thinking is also when we can actually help them understand how the decisions that they make today can have consequences and will have consequences later in life, right? So we give them we encourage them to think about, say for example, in substance abuse, we ask them their favorite hero or their favorite athlete, and they'll end up saying somebody like, say, Virat Kohli or Sachin Tendulkar or Sania Mirza, anybody, Roger Federer, Nadal, anybody. And what Cristiano Ronaldo, who is famously a teetotaler, he does not have alcohol. And so these are the examples that we use to help them think critically, to actually evaluate. They have the option of say taking a drug and not taking a drug. Those are the 2 options that they have. So that is the critical thinking, is the phase wherein we encourage them to think about consequences of the decision that they'll make. After that, they reach a decision, which is, say, that I'll not take the drug, or maybe I will take the drug, right? And so then we give them, we help them develop the courage to actually walk on the path that they've come to. That is, you decide and you walk on it. So if you've decided not to go for drugs, if you've decided not to have alcohol, because your critical thinking helped you understand how it's not going to have good consequences, then decision making actually helps them get the courage to actually stick up to peer pressure, remember all the strengths that they have from self-awareness, and actually be able to tell their peers that, you know what, I'm really not comfortable with drugs, and I'm as cool as CR7. I'm not going to drink alcohol. So decision making helps them develop the courage, and of course self-awareness is very important. It's the underlying life skill in all of these. And so with all of these, if the steps are repeated routinely, you end up solving a lot of problems when you use these 4 critical thinking skills. And with that, we finished this cluster, but I have one slide here which I forgot about, but we need to pause to reflect. So when we talk to our parents, parents of adolescents and young adults, we need to help them reflect. Do we actually allow our child to think creatively? Do we actually allow them to analyze situations, to make their own decisions, or do we impose our own opinions and choices on them? So if there's a decision that was imposed upon you, how likely are you to actually follow through with it your entire life? So if we as adults are to impose very strict rules, well, they'll not have alcohol till say 25 when they are still living in your home. But what about when they move out? And it's not just about alcohol, it's just an example. It could be hard drugs. It could be them spiraling into this negative spiral of substance abuse, or a plethora of other risk-taking behaviors that they could do. So you would want them to involve them in the decision-making process for their own life, so that they have a sense of ownership for that decision, and that itself will motivate them to stick through with the decision. And so it's very important for us to convey to the parents that we need to respect our child. And I've often heard parents say ki respect kya hota hai? You don't respect your child, you love your child. Well, how do you love somebody if you can't respect them? It's as simple as that. If you love somebody, respect is a part of the package. Respect means asking a person their own opinion about their own life. If you keep imposing your decisions onto your child, how are you respecting your child? You are not. And the bottom line is that if you don't respect your child, I'm sorry to say, and we have to tell this to the parents, but if you don't respect your child, it's a you yeah so it's you have to respect your child to basically love your child. You can't tell a parent that they don't love their child. That wouldn't be correct, and that would be too harsh, and that's incorrect. But it's important for us to convey that if you love your child, you respect your child. And respecting your child does not mean getting up when your child walks into the room. It simply means asking the child what they want, and then you discuss with them the consequences of whatever they want, and you point out all the negative things that can happen if they go ahead with the decision that they just conveyed. If they told you that, okay, I'm just going to go in and have enjoy drug use with my friends, we can actually point out the consequences of those behaviors and help our child decide on their own that they are going to abstain. And so this is a point to reflect upon, which it's very important that we discuss with the parents, be it in our OPDs or be it in our communities. The next skill, the last cluster, is the social skills, which talks about empathy. And this is basically just being able to imagine what life is like for another person, even if, and this part is important, even if you have not been in that situation before. Being able to understand, being able to imagine what somebody else is going through, even when you have not necessarily gone through that. That is empathy. And it is a skill that can be cultivated. It's not something that one can learn in a day, but it's something that can be cultivated. And there are a list of activities for that, which I do not think we really have the time to go into. But the one thing which we can actually discuss or reflect upon is that how empathetic are we ourselves? There's a lot of intolerance, not just in our country, but the world around, because people are so firm in their beliefs that they're simply intolerant of what other humans are thinking. What if we could, and it's not an oversimplification, what if we could become adults who are simply able to tolerate others who do not agree with you? Well, I don't agree with you, but that does not mean you don't deserve to exist. I understand your perspective. I understand the views you have. I understand that you have these views because of the life experiences that you have. So if we could start being empathetic gradually, maybe we could model empathetic behavior to our child, because there's no way you can sit and read a book to teach your child empathy. You'll have to model these skills, especially empathy. And only then will you actually bring up an empathetic child. And that is something that, again, we need to convey to our parents. The second last skill is effective communication. That basically deals with verbal and non-verbal communication. We talk about how communication is not just the words that we speak, but also our body language. importantly, we also talk about how there are 3 types of communication. One is passive, wherein you are very subservient, very submissive. Ye kaha, okay kar diya. Wo kaha, okay kar diya. It's very nice. It's very nice. Somebody who does everything that anybody asks them to do, right? So you might think that, well, that's not wrong. If my child is just listening to me all the time, well, that's good. But well, it's not only you that the child will listen to. When the child goes out into the world, there'll be a lot of people around that child, and they'll keep asking your child to do stuff, and your child will just end up doing all of that because that child was expected to obey your orders, fulfill your expectations in your home, in your family. So as parents, it's very important for us to understand that we don't want our child to just listen to us passively, just कि बहुत अच्छा है जो कहा कर देता है. That's a passive communication that we are trying to encourage, and it can actually lead to very dire consequences later in life when they are unable to think critically, evaluate situations critically, and just do what others ask them to do. So you wouldn't want that for your child, right? The second would be aggressive communication, wherein the child becomes just rebellious, is rude to others. That is aggressive communication, which all of us just all of us just accept that aggressive communication is not something that that is desirable, because it's basically just dominance over others around you, right? So what we want instead is assertive communication, wherein our child is able to express their opinions firmly while also respecting opinions of others, regardless of whether they agree with them or not. So simply being able to put across your point and then accept or tolerate others' beliefs as well is assertive communication. And a part of that is also learning to say no. If you are not comfortable with something, it's okay to say no. You don't need to be passive and say yes all the time. It's okay to just say no. And so that brings us to the end of effective communication. And we've already discussed the points that I've written in Pause to Reflect. And the last life skill that we have here is interpersonal relationships. And so with our empathy and with our ability to communicate healthily, we are basically able to relate in positive ways with people that we interact with. Interpersonal relationships become warm and mutually nurturing. So effective or good interpersonal or desirable or healthy interpersonal relationships would be when it's a two-way street, wherein I also grow from the relationship, and so does the other person in the relationship. And this relationship is not just referring to romantic relationships or relationship between partners or spouses. No, this is relationships with everybody around us. So we talk about how relationships need to be mutually nurturing, and they are very crucial for our mental and social well-being, because we as humans need others' support. We want others to empathize with us, and we also need to empathize with others, invest in relationships ourselves. It's basically a mutually, it's a reciprocal relationship. And the last point here is very important. Interpersonal relationships, life skills also deals with being able to end relationships constructively. So if relationships are no longer reciprocal, are no longer mutually nurturing, we need to know how to end relationships constructively. And so this is a very complex something that even I have not actually to be very honest, this is not something I've discussed with adolescents so far. And this is something that I'm still trying to learn myself. And but I know that this is a very important part of the life skills superpowers that we just talked about. And so with that, I come to the end of my presentation. I just hope that I've been able to achieve this intersection wherein you want to hear what I said, and I said what you want to hear. And I hope that through this session, we can all just agree upon one thing, that life skills are relevant to each one of us, regardless of our age, regardless of where we are in life. I had one field worker actually tell me that life skills to Rambaan hai. कि सारी लाइफ की प्रॉब्लम्स का एक सॉल्यूशन है लाइफ स्किल्स, बिकॉज लाइफ स्किल्स कवर एवरीथिंग that we face in our everyday routine lives. And so I hope we can agree upon the fact that we need to empower our own selves. We need to start practicing life skills our own self, and all of us already have life skills. I mean, life skills are just skills needed to live life, and all of us are living life, means all of us do have life skills. It's just important that we do take some time to actively think about it, and with that we can actually model the behaviors that we would want our younger generation to practice when during their life times. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. These are my contact details, and I can share these again after the Q&A.
Thank you, Chitra. That was wonderful because you talked about life skills in a very different manner than what we really usually hear in various conferences, and we read about life skills in our adolescent pediatrics. So thank you for that. And for one thing which I forgot to mention about Chitra was that she has been very helpful in running this Saturday Club since it started online. And she was instrumental in organizing this YouTube channel streaming. And thanks to her that, and in future also, I hope that she will continue this help to Saturday Club for running uninterruptedly for such a long time. So now it's open to the audience for their comments, questions, etc.
During adolescence, it's a time when you make a lot of choices. So we need to teach adolescents how to make right choice. And for making the right choice, as you say, life skills, but then help of role models, inspiring books, and role of religion. These are three things are very important for developing and making the choices.
I absolutely agree with you, sir. Thank you so much.
Jagdish bhai,
Yes.
you talked about religion. In our Adi Shankaracharya gave Panchayatan. The first value is to control the basic instinct, Muladhar Chakra. If you want to become a Ganesh, Ganapati, leader of men, then have Vivek. Have the skill of basic discrimination, what words or action to do. And second is empathy from Shiva, Ashutosh Shiva. Third is Gauri's bhakti, the faith in yourself and the work and the life purpose of life you have selected. Fourth is Vishnu Tattva, means all inclusiveness, forgetting your own self and including everybody in the work, that is Sahana Bhunakti. And the last thing the Panchayatan says is sun. Every day, with new sunrise, you have to have an open mind to accept the new and shed the obsolete.
Thank you, Hemant, for those comments.
Yeah.
Our adolescents are not ready to listen to this kind of philosophical discourses. They are more looking at the day-to-day issues that they face. There are a lot of questions in their mind which they are not able to express well, and the life skills would help them to manage those stress better. That is what we are talking about, resilience. Any other comments?
Yes, sir, if I may.
Yes, Jagdish, go ahead.
Always a delightful talk from Chitra as usual. Very, very nicely she brought out all the life skills. She brought out a very nice metaphor about the river. I will also suggest one more. This is from a famous psychologist called Hugh Alberts. And he has done a kind of metaphor of what is called as a sailboat. The sailboat metaphor, where you imagine yourself as the captain of a sailboat in the midst of an ocean, and you then decide, and you have got a lot of other components around that, like for example the destination, the tide, the rain, the sun. What are the positive factors that will affect your thinking? So there are a lot of things in that, and it's a very useful metaphor to work with children and adolescents because it's a kind of game. Because see, these life skills are very difficult. They are very good on theory, but how do you put them into practice? You see, for an adolescent, it must be something very simple so that they can think about all these things. Because otherwise, what happens is they, as Chitra mentioned, the process of self-reflection and to know oneself is not very easy. You see, because most adolescents are impulsive. They take decisions immediately. They don't give time to think about a decision. And that is another major problem which we face with adolescents. So this kind of a metaphor is a kind of a thing where they can picturize or visualize what are the things that we need to do to get things going. That is one kind of metaphor which I think Chitra might find useful when she's talking to adolescents. And the second thing which I also feel is we must not wait till adolescents to look at all this. You know, we should start looking at children right from the time they are in school to try and see how we can prevent many of these things. And one of the things which I tell all my parents is the concept of what is called a psychological immunization. The psychological immunization means that ultimately the child's psychological problems or conflict starts from the feeling of not being loved. So I tell parents, whatever you do, whatever else you do or don't do, end of the day, when you go and they put the child to bed at whatever age, go and hug the child, give a kiss and say, I love you for who you are. Parents say, this is all accepted, this is all known. But at the end of the day, the child needs to know that he's accepted, irrespective of all the problems that he has. And that basic, esteem that builds up in the child will keep him resilient to many of the problems he faces in adolescence. If you look at many of the adolescents, they all come from families where there is some degree of lack of love. See, there is some broken family, some multiple, there's a joint family where there is no attention to the child. So a lot of these things happen in families because of this lack of love. And I feel that going and hugging the child, parents say, he's my child, he should understand that I love him. Children don't do that. You need to go and physically demonstrate that you accept and love them for who they are. And these are things that can prevent from many of the problems in adolescence.
Well said, Jagdish. Very well said. Any other comments?
Jagdish bhai, only yesterday spontaneous poetry came to me. Fly, tortoise, fly. In this race of life of tortoise and hare, there are many tortoises which need encouragement.
Okay, so thank you for being with us on a Saturday morning. So we end the session here. We meet next Saturday morning again. Thank you all. We end the session. Yes.
Satish bhai, you have also done a lot of counseling work and courses. So it is very unfair of you to keep all your wisdom to yourself. Even if your daughter has spoken, I request you to share few principles which you have developed of 30 years of helping the children. Please.
Thank you, Hemant, for that compliment. What I would like to emphasize again here is what Jagdish was trying to tell was about parenting. So when it comes to parenting, either a small child or an adolescent, I usually try to explain them the 4 principles of a healthy upbringing of children, and that is these are the pillars of upbringing of children and meeting their emotional needs. So it is LEAD. I always give this acronym LEAD. L is unconditional love, what Jagdish was trying to tell, not only physically, but by our actions and our behaviors and our non-verbal communication. The child should always feel that he is being loved. Whenever we get angry with them, we scold them, they feel that for that moment, there is a lack of love. And when there is lack of love, children do not follow what we want them to convey. So love, unconditional love, and E is example, that what kind of role model you are portraying yourself to your own kids. A is acceptance, accepting whatever, as Jagdish said, for whatever he or she is, with all his strengths and weaknesses. That is acceptance. And D is discipline. I would say that any parents who are not able to discipline their children, they probably don't love their children. So these are the 4 main pillars of upbringing of children. That is what I would like to add to what Chitra has said. And life skill, as she said, it's all lifelong process. It starts from early childhood to till you die. We always learn these skills, and more we learn, we better manage our lives. So that's my comment. Thank you, and Hemant, for asking me to make some comment, because Chitra's talk, so I thought I should not be talking much about this topic.
Yes.
Jagdish bhai, you have not only led a good life, but you have led till grandchildren. Please add something.
Nothing much to add than what Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa and Satish Bhai has said.
Jagdish Bhai is a
Thank
living
you.
example of how the life can be lived actually. So he's a living example, and a lot of inspiration from him for all of us. Sometime later, sir, we will invite you again to talk about you have in past talked about certain books, etc. But we would invite you to talk about how you have lived your life. So it will be interesting to learn many lessons from your life itself.
Sorry. Yeah, it will be a pleasure. Definitely.
Thank you. So
Thank
we
you.
end.
Satish bhai, what is the name of the book Chinnappa said?
Jagdish.
Jagdish Chinnappa, what is the name of the book, sir? Sailboat. Has he left?
He's he
No,
is
no,
there.
he's there.
Please,
I'm
Sailboat
just trying
is
to
metaphor
unmute
he
myself.
used. It's not
For-
the name of the book.
So no, for people who are interested in this, there is a very interesting site called positivepsychology.com, and you can Google positivepsychology.com. It is by a person called Seth Fontaine Pennock, and the psychologist is Hugh Alberts. And you can put in their sailboat metaphor. It gives you the beautiful picture of the sailboat and all the things that it stands for.
Thank you.
Chitra, you can actually tell more about river of life that you had used as a metaphor in imparting life skills to girls in your community.
So I actually, as Jagdish sir said, Papa, I think yeah. So as Jagdish sir actually mentioned, using metaphors. So this river of life is a metaphor that we use, but rather than talking about it, as I mentioned, it's an activity that we encourage the adolescent girls to did. It was a part of my thesis, and so I already. Papa, actually, I did describe it in detail, so I think it's okay if I don't repeat it, since we've already crossed the time. But I can surely share the link to my website gallery. That is the link to Medicine Beyond Classroom gallery. And there are a lot of photos depicting all the activities that I've done with the adolescents in the field. So I will place that in the chat box right away.
Okay, thank you, Chitra. Thank you. Thank you all. So we end the session here. We meet the next Saturday again.